who thought about societies in much more, let's say, detached, socially detached, contractualist terms, where free individuals harmoniously simply agree on signing contracts and in entering the division of labor without any problems. Um, Durkheim also disagrees with economists in that he does not think that individual pursuit of happiness can explain the division of labor, and we will see this in a second. And he also disagrees with the optimism of economists that modern persons live in the best of all worlds, that they're happier um, than the individuals in the pre-modern world. So this is a point where Durkheim's founder's Jekyll pessimism shines through, I would say. But yeah, Durkheim in his later life, we saw that also, at least through secondary sources, studied also native Australians, and hence sort of got an understanding of them not necessarily being unhappier than modern persons in his society. He also is a little bit more pessimistic than economists when it comes to the, let's say, at least secondary or side effects of the division of labor. That is when he points to the anomic states of societies, right, or the anomalist kind of aspects in the division of labor. Think about the losers in the division of labor. Think about also alienation in Marx, something that Durkheim implicitly also agrees with. Think also about the higher frequency of suicides following economic crises. So all of these, let's say, negative side effects at least make Durkheim a little bit more pessimistic regarding how beneficial the new form of social integration through division of labor really is. Last but not least, on the more methodological side, Durkheim disagrees with economists when it comes to just the epistemological style. So Durkheim writes at a time at the end of the 19th century when economists had started to settle on describing the social world in terms also of models used in physics of the time. So basically, to think about social things and abstractions of models. And here, Durkheim proposes a much more, let's say, positivistic, if you want, empirical, hands-on epistemological style in favor of studying just social facts as concrete things. So far, the agreements and disagreements with economists. So Durkheim considered Marx as a socialist radical and was not at all in a direct exchange with him, and read Marx also through the works of other socialist leaders like Lavriola, for instance. And he reviewed also a book of his, and this is where one can get an idea from how Durkheim would refer to Marx in his own writings. So first of all, Durkheim considers Marxism, if you want, or socialism and revolutionary violence itself as an anomic phenomenon, that shows that society is not integrated enough. But for Durkheim, more and more revolution would not solve this disintegration, as we will see in a second. So Durkheim also disagrees with the implicit economic determinism in Marx that sees basically the economic organization as prior to everything in society, right? So the economic basis determining the superstructure. and that sees economic reorganization as the solution to the instability of modern societies. Um, Durkheim does not think that an economic solution alone is enough to solve disintegration phenomena in modern societies. So, for instance, just fulfilling workers' economic demands uh, in times of inflation, right, like these days, would not be enough, according to Durkheim, to make a society morally sound again. It needs more. Um, and so, what it needs is, according to Durkheim, a strengthening of the moral basis of society. And here he, in a way, agrees with more conservatively leaning sociologists such as Auguste Comte and others, but he also disagrees with them about how, let's say, the strengthening of the moral foundations of society should look like. And according to Durkheim, the remedy lies not in a strong authoritarian state. For this, Durkheim is much too Republican. And it also does not lie in strengthening religion, at least not, let's say, a spiritual kind of religion, perhaps a secular one. So for Durkheim, ultimately, it is something like the modern education institutions of the state that would be a good remedy to solve the crisis of disintegration in modern society. All right, so let's move on to the division of labor, then, the main reading for today. By now, you're probably familiar with these kind of two-stage models. It's a little bit reminiscent of Herbert Spencer's model. So the military and industrial societies, Spencer calls it. Here we have the segmented society in Durkheim and the differentiated one. So some similarities, also some differences. Durkheim sees these two types, we may also say ideal types of societies, as distinguished by the type of solidarity they rely on. And very famously, he distinguishes then the mechanic solidarity, that is the solidarity based on the similarity between the members of this segmented society on the one hand, and the organic solidarity, or the solidarity based, if you want, on being different, but in a division of labor, as a solidarity of differentiated societies on the other hand. Yeah. So based on similarity versus based on being different. Just a footnote here, as some of you may know, the famous distinction of these, let's say, traditional versus modern societies used in Ferdinand Tanner's work between community and society, Gemeinschaft und Gesellschaft. There, Tannes actually uses the term organic for the traditional societies and mechanic for the modern societies, something that Durkheim also criticizes in a review of Tannes' work. End of the footnote. Segmented societies, you may think about them in metaphoric terms. That's also how Durkheim describes it, a little bit with reference to the biology of his time. So as kind of clan structures where they replicate when they grow. They just add another ring that looks similar, but it's just a replication. So a little bit perhaps like the ancient Greeks built colonies in the Mediterranean, just a replica of the sort of mother city then being founded on a different side of the seashore. And whenever a town became too large, then a new town would simply be founded. And this is different than in the socially differentiated societies, because there, let's say, the growth of societies may also go hand in hand with a deeper functional differentiation in societies. So segmented societies are rather organized around the status of different groups in the societies. In differentiated societies, this is more driven by the functional roles that are occupied by individuals in this kind of society. Very important distinction also of these two ideal types for Durkheim is the kind of law and justification for punishment being used in the two societies. So in the segmented society, when someone commits a crime, the most important thing then is to use law in the repressive way and to make sure that punishment makes everyone equal again after the crime has been committed. So in a way, a reaffirmation of this principle that everyone should be similar. So this is also justifying then a punishment by way of repression. This is different in modern society. So contract-based societies where a breach of a contract is basically then simply responded with just a restoration of the original situation. So yeah, by way of compensation payments. And here the idea of the law is then rather to restitute the prior property constellation. So a very different kind of idea about what law is, but also what punishment then is. Just as a little footnote here, in sociology, there's a sociology of deviant behavior that is very much inspired also by Durkheim's thinking about the norm and what deviations from the norm really mean. There's also a sociology of law that looks at how societies can be understood through different ways law is organized. A third inspiration here from Durkheim's analysis of punishment is in theories of punishment, right? This is more philosophical or ethical discipline that thinks about different theories of how to justify punishment. And so the retributivist theory of punishment is the modern name then for what Durkheim sees to be existing in the segmented societies, where punishment is a lot about retribution. Yeah? So making someone also feel the punishment. Okay, Durkheim has these ideal types, right? Much like other sociological classics. He at least implicitly also suggests a certain teleology in that societies move towards the more differentiated kind. It is a little bit of a, let's say, materially less demanding kind of teleology when compared, for instance, to Marx and Hegel's, in that the newer societies, in Durkheim's view, are above all simply more complex societies. Things become more and more complex. So this is a little bit easier to defend as a teleological claim than perhaps let's say, communist society as a final stage. And this is also something that modern, let's say, functionalist theories would still defend. Durkheim also comes up with a new explanation for why the transition from the segmented to the differentiated society takes place. So Durkheim's style of argument usually just starts with all of the existing explanations, then he rules all of them out and presents his own explanation as the one explanation that is sort of left in the room and hence true. This style of argument